Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, I'm looking at Dynasty sells. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. 60% of viewers aren't subscribed. Let's change that today. Here's our first sell. Travis Etienne. So I feel like I've talked about Travis Etienne on the channel a lot. But, his price keeps rising, so I think we have to do it again. On Keep Trade Cut, he's RB7. I have him at RB9. I'm almost 15 overall spots lower on Travis Etienne than KTC. I do not see the same premium value that the market seems to see at this time. I think that spending a fourth round Superflex startup pick on Etienne is absolutely crazy. Would I want my fourth player in a Dynasty Superflex league to be Travis Etienne? I don't think so. Let's look at Etienne's career so far to see kind of why I feel that way. So as we know, in 2021, he missed the whole rookie season due to injury. Then in 2022, he came out and was good. 220 carries, 1,125 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5.1 yards a carry, and 35 catches for 316 yards. He was solid there. Then in 2023, the Jaguars drafted Tank Bigsby, who didn't do anything. And Etienne, again, was a workhorse. 267 carries, 1,008 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3.8 yards a carry, and 58 catches, 476 yards and touchdown. So more receiving work, but less efficient on the ground. So the Jaguars did exercise Etienne's fifth-year option. And once again, Tank Bigsby is struggling in camp. They did draft Killian Robinson in the 5th round, but to be honest, I don't think much of Robinson. And Dearness Johnson was even worse, much worse than Travis Etienne or even Bigsby last year. So they really have no alternatives. So that's why I think Etienne's price is rising, because people are seeing the situation. They see that there are no alternative running backs. Nothing is going to change. So his price is still high. Now, some trade ideas for Etienne. For me, I find Etienne, if you did a startup this year and you're taking my advice, you don't have Travis Etienne. You don't have him. But it's easily possible, because Etienne has not always been overpriced to me, that you do have him on your team. You used him last year and now you want to move on. So what are some ways you could do that? I mean, the first and most obvious is if I could get a 25 first in Superflex, not one QB, but in Superflex for Travis Etienne, I would do it. Why would I do it? Well, the 25 class is kind of hit or miss. We're not sure. There's no Caleb Williams in that class. But we do know that there will be some quarterbacks. There are a lot of quarterbacks that people are interested in that might be taken in the first round. I like the value balance of a 25 first a lot more than Travis Etienne. Already 25 years old, already 2 seasons on the resume, and the second one was not as efficient with a high workload. Is Travis Etienne really going to give you many years of great value, or is he more just someone to ride out for a little while? And I think it's more the latter than the former. Another one. If I could go down from Travis Etienne to Isaiah Pacheco, who's the same age and, arguably was more efficient and more effective last year, and get a 25 second with Pacheco, would I do that? I think so. I think I would. And then the last one, if I could just straight shop Etienne for Jonathan Brooks, who's over 4 years younger. And, Brooks is not quite the level of prospect as Travis Etienne, but, he's a very good prospect. So I would be in on Brooks, definitely, over Etienne. Maybe you could get something even with Brooks. Now, I think, as I said earlier, the current situation is contributing to the high price of Travis Etienne. There are currently no other running backs on the Jaguars who are legitimate competition, but we know that doesn't last. Teams try to bring in alternative running backs, unless even the 49ers are trying to bring in alternative running backs. They have Christian McCaffrey. Eventually, there will be another running back who takes work from Travis Etienne, because we saw in 2023 that the extra volume using Travis Etienne on every down may not be the best idea. So I do think some competition will emerge, whether it's one of the guys they have or someone they add in the future. Next up, Jordan Love. Now, before we get into discussing why I think Jordan Love is sell, Jordan Love is not bad. Actually, I think Jordan Love is pretty good. He's a franchise quarterback, a high-value superflex asset. But we are getting a little carried away. Why? He's already up to quarterback 9 on Keep Trade Cut. I have him at quarterback 15. He's 15th overall on Keep Trade Cut. I have him at 22nd overall. So I still have him as in the top 2 rounds of a superflex startup. Just not quite as high as Keep Trade Cut. Why do I say that? Good question. So in 2023, which is his only season where he really played, 64.2% completion, 4,159 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 7.2 yards per attempt, and 50 carries, 247 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So the 4 touchdowns are nice. Just 247 rushing yards, though, over full 17 games. We're not relying on rushing production from Jordan Love. So over the first 7 games, it was rough. 2-5 record, 57.7% completion, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 6.4 yards per attempt. So just based on that, Love wasn't even going to be the starter this year. And that's what I thought in the middle of the year. I thought, well, this didn't work out. It wasn't good. But then Love closed out on an absolute tear. 7-3 record, 68.7% completion, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and 8.6 yards per attempt. So he dominated over the final 10 games. And he continued that momentum in the playoffs. He was really good against Dallas, not so much against San Francisco. But overall, solid. The Packers brought back the exact same receiving weapons from 2022. There were no additions, but they brought back the same players. No one left. They replaced Aaron Jones with a combination of Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd. I do think that's an upgrade. And I do think that the Packers maybe will run a little bit more in 2024 with better running backs. Love is still waiting on his big long-term deal. That has not happened yet. Now, when it comes to trading Jordan Love, you have to get something big back. And there are other ways you can trade Jordan Love. I'm going to focus on quarterback trades, but there are many ways you could trade Jordan Love other than these. But, these are some of the more basic ideas we're going to get into. Could you sell Jordan Love for Jaden Daniels plus anything? I like Jordan Love. We saw 10 games of Jordan Love being really good for fantasy and for real life, but it was based on a high number of touchdowns. Will that continue? I don't know. I think the truth about Jordan Love is somewhere in between the first 7 games and the final 10 games. Closer to the final 10 games, I do think he learned something. What I don't think is ever going to happen is that Jordan Love is going to start running the ball. So he's not going to do that. And if he's not going to do that, that means that he has to be close to the final 10 games to really deliver consistently. Jaden Daniels, we know, delivers rushing upside. He was the number 2 overall pick for a reason. So for me, if you could get something with Jaden Daniels, something significant even, I would absolutely do that. Take the risk. And then the other one, and I just noticed that Jordan Love has moved ahead of Justin Herbert in Keep Trade Cut Dynasty. I get why. I get the situation. People a lot, and we don't play Dynasty anymore. We play 5 minutes from now. I see that Justin Herbert's situation is not as good. But Justin Herbert, a lot of people think Jordan Love is younger than he is because he sat for 3 years. They're the same age. I mean, they were the same draft class. They're both the 2020 draft class. So it just feels like people are tired of Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert has demonstrated over a far longer period of time that he is a good quarterback than Jordan Love. And I do think that you would rather have the rest of Justin Herbert's career, even if you wouldn't rather have Justin Herbert this one particular year. So for me, if you could get Justin Herbert for Jordan Love, I would absolutely do that. Now, my closing comments on Jordan Love. I do really like him. He's a franchise quarterback, but the problem is there's a lot of those. And I just like him less among that group than others. We're starting to get a little bit crazy off a 10 to 12 game sample size and someone who doesn't have the rushing upside. And while I do like him, I really just think if I look at Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, Jordan Love was on the side of touchdown regression. He had touchdown regression on his side. CJ Stroud didn't so much. But CJ Stroud, to me, showed that he is an elite player. I don't know if I saw that from Jordan Love. So, yeah, I'm just nervous that Jordan Love's a little bit overvalued. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month, and all support goes to make this YouTube channel possible, keep the content independent, and all of that. So I just want to thank everyone who signed up so far, and also everyone who may consider signing up in the future. With that said, let's move into our third sell. George Pickens. So on Keep Trade Cut, he's wide receiver 23, so he's continuing to rise. I am at wide receiver 28. I did this as a video back in March when Pickens was wide receiver 26. Somehow he's actually continuing to rise, even though rookies came in ahead of him. And I'm a little bit scared of that. In 2022, Pickens had 52 catches for 801 yards and 4 touchdowns on 84 targets, 3.1 catches and 47.1 yards per game. And then 2023, 63 catches, 1,140 yards, 5 touchdowns, 106 targets, and 3.7 catches and 67.1 yards per game. The current situation, of course, we have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields competing at quarterback. Minimal other wide receivers outside of Roman Wilson. So he's the only target on the team. Typically, we overvalue players in that situation because, well, there's no one else to get the ball. That usually is not a good argument. Now, what are some trade ideas to capitalize on this market value of George Pickens? Could you sell George Pickens for Jackson Smith-Njigba plus anything? I still think that Jackson Smith-Njigba is just a much more complete player than George Pickens. I would rather have the rest of Jackson Smith-Njigba's career. And I just have some concerns with George Pickens, which we'll get into a little bit in the closing. Similar to Travis Etienne earlier, if I could trade George Pickens for 25 first in Superflex, I would. I'd rather just take that asset over Pickens. And then for someone in this year's class, you get Keon Coleman in a 25-second. I think I'd rather just that value package over George Pickens. So to kind of close out on why I don't like George Pickens all that much compared to his price, my big issue is the targets. He had a 21.9% target share in 2023, which is good, but not alpha level. 20.4 target percentage rate is also not great. And really what we have here, it's the vacated target argument. Well, because Deontay Johnson is gone, George Pickens is going to become an alpha wide receiver, and he's going to develop into this. He's going to earn lots more targets, blah, blah, blah. Or the more likely thing is that George Pickens is going to remain George Pickens, a deep threat who has a lot of yards per reception and doesn't have that many targets. Which of those is more likely? I think it's the second thing. Now, will Russell Wilson or Justin Fields revive the Steelers' offense? Maybe, but neither the Broncos nor the Bears passed more or produced more passing yards than the 2023 Steelers, which is very sad if you actually think about what that means. That those offenses with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson did not actually produce more passing yards significantly than the 2023 Steelers with Kenny Pickett playing a majority of the games. Just think about what that means when you're assuming, wow, everything is going to be revived by Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. If Justin Fields treats George Pickens like DJ Moore, maybe. But George Pickens is nothing like DJ Moore. They're not similar players at all. So, I would be careful extrapolating in that way. Now, I have a couple of Patreon questions that we'll get through real quick from the discussion sections of my Patreon Discord. So let's jump into those. Does PPR change your wide receiver ranks drastically, or is it pretty similar? I'd say it changes my dynasty ranks relatively little. Almost all dynasty leagues are PPR, so my dynasty ranks are always based on a PPR format. I think I'd be slightly more willing to draft running backs in half PPR because they're better scoring, but barely. As for redraft, I'd factor it in more because longevity isn't as important. And I would, look at those wide receivers who are going to score more touchdowns in half PPR, running backs over wide receivers in half PPR. But in start sit, it does matter. You'll see it week to week, and you got to join the Patreon to see how it affects my wide receiver ranks and my flex conversation in start sit. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, rookie, start sit, and more. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.